Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Very Connected podcast. And we're so excited to have you here today. We are being joined by Tova. And Tova, say hi.
Hello, everybody. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I apologize on my end. You might be noticing a little bit of computer glitching. We are having a really bad storm here. So I kind of warned Tova. She may have to be take over for me a little bit if I run into too much buffering or something like that for a little bit. So I'll try to keep an eye on that and we'll kind of keep going forward. Guys, I think this topic today kind of hits home for me because I feel like setbacks can actually be seen as a gift. And today's topic is the hero's journey of change, reframing setbacks as part of the path. And, while setbacks can be seen as failure, it can lead you feeling a little bit like giving up and that type of thing. It actually, Tova's going to talk to us today about it being a stepping stone and what that looks like. Going to talk about how challenges, how cravings, how slip ups, all of those things blend into our growth, our resilience, and also self understanding, self awareness. So, some really big things here going on. And I'm going to just do a little description of Tova's background. She basically she's a registered provisional registered drama therapist, AMFT. She's also helping adults and those around her, helping with well-being and a sense of just loving everyday life, enchantment, we're going to call it. She takes a holistic, grounded approach to mental health, integrating lifestyle habits, relationships, social connections, and meaning. And she's going to be sharing with us all kinds of, I'm going to call it wisdom because that's what I think that you are sharing here, Tova, just like looking at your background and stuff. She holds a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, molecular biology, and an MBA and a certificate in integrative nutrition, which I think you can mix all of that and bring all of that in here for us. We appreciate you so much, Tova. In that, I want to welcome everybody that's joining us on this. Um, on this. I know some of you are saying hello and telling us where you're from. Thank you for doing that. If you're joining on the live, please let us know a little bit about yourselves. Let us know if it's a location, if you're on a weight loss path, maybe you're having surgery, maybe you're taking GLP-1s, whatever it might be. We're all in this together. And we're also promoting this on Facebook. So if you're joining us on Facebook, I'll be watching the comments there. Tova, I'm going to let you kind of dive in here and I'm going to let you do a more formal introduction of yourself and why this group was important for you to come here today and be with us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. And absolutely, I definitely want to kind of begin by sharing a little bit about where I'm coming from in terms of my approach to thinking about weight management, because I really looked at this topic from a lot of different angles throughout my life. And to be here today and share this with you, Brenda, to share this with everybody who's listening in is absolutely a huge honor. So, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much to those who are listening in today or listening to this later. Yeah, I originally studied biochemistry and molecular biology in college. And part of that choice was because I really wanted to understand, like, at the most fundamental level, like, how the body actually loses weight. And around that time, the Atkins diet was like getting this huge, like, resurgence, and there was all this interest around it. And anyone who's familiar with Atkins, there's this huge emphasis on ketosis and metabolic processes. So thinking about different metabolic processes was like super interesting to me, and quite honestly, it really still is. But over the years, my curiosity about weight management and weight loss took a lot of different forms. So I developed weight loss related apps after I graduated with my MBA. I worked at Weight Watchers as a leader. I worked as a weight loss coach. I went back and earned a certificate in integrative nutrition. And then I eventually went back to school and got my master's in counseling psychology with a concentration in drama therapy. And now I work currently as a registered associate marriage and family therapist under supervision of Dr. Candace Setti, who's been on here before. She is a weight loss expert down in San Diego. And then I'm also a provisional registered drama therapist. And throughout this whole journey, what I've really learned and observed throughout the way is that for some people, like a relatively straightforward biological or behavioral intervention is absolutely enough to support weight loss. They stop drinking regular soda, they find some type of movement that they really enjoy, they improve their sleep, they reduce stress, and it's relatively easy for them to make those changes, and it doesn't really go much deeper than that. But there are some people, and particularly those who struggled with weight loss over time, for them, weight loss becomes something a little bit more complex because it really starts to become engaged and entangled with aspects of identity, coping with life in various ways, sense of meaning, and really relationship with the self. And, Brenda, like you were saying, it's really those moments where people struggle the most. So urges, cravings, regressions that are often places where the deepest transformation is really possible. And I like what you said as kind of thinking about it almost as like a gift, right? Because I also come from a really big improv background, and there's that idea that everything that we get is a gift. I mean, there are some nuance to that. But that can kind of challenge us in how we reframe what happens with us. And it's really a place where that deep transformation is possible. And I say that because I truly believe that when you are able to confront and overcome whatever it is that holds you back personally, and it can look different for each person from long-term weight loss, it can really lead to that greater self-understanding and awareness, greater trust in your inner wisdom and your intuition, and really this capacity to choose and exercise agency in your life, which quite honestly really extends far beyond food and weight loss into genuine self-transformation. So my talk today reflects that long arc of experience. Of course, really honoring the physical body, integrating psychological and behavioral approaches when necessary, and also recognizing that lasting change it doesn't have to, it may not for everyone, but it can have a deeper, even existential or spiritual dimension to it. And this framework that I'm going to talk about today, my intention is to really offer a way to understand weight loss, like as an opportunity for that profound self-transformation, one that absolutely engages the body, the psyche, and really those deeper layers of meaning beneath behavior. And so as I go along, the invitation is always, for folks to take what you want, what resonates, and leave what doesn't. So today, first of all, whenever anybody hears drama therapy, it's always like, well, what is that? So I'm gonna preempt it. I'm gonna share a little bit about what drama therapy is, and particularly how I use it as a lens to think about the hero's journey. Introduce the hero's journey as like this conceptual map for transformation, and then we'll apply it to weight loss, particularly with setbacks, and then I will guide you through a creative activity to put this into practice. So first of all, what is drama therapy? A really great starting point is the North American Drama Therapy Association's website. They actually have this quote on the website. Briefly, it's the intentional use of drama and or theater processes to achieve therapeutic goals. And it can certainly go more extensively than that. I have a YouTube video where I kind of unpack this description a little bit more and talk about more about how I personally work with drama therapy because different drama therapists might use it in different ways. But particularly today, and when we're thinking about the hero's journey framework, I'm really resting on these kind of core foundations. So, absolutely, story, symbol, and metaphor, that is basically what the hero's journey is at its like core. The idea of play, being very playful, playing with ideas in various ways, really leveraging creativity and imagination, and really thinking about embodied and experiential processes. And what I mean by that is that it's not, I mean, just you can certainly listen in, but really experiencing something and really kind of applying it to your own self is a different kind of way of really kind of settling into that knowing and that experience. And I think drama therapy offers a lot of really powerful ways to expand our inner world, particularly when we're thinking about the hero's journey. So, one is that we can explore relationships to ourself, our inner parts of self, our inner roles, past versions of ourselves, future versions of ourselves, other people in our life, certainly nature, and even spiritual dimensions. And it does that by inviting this idea of play into what some folks call surplus reality or the dramatic realm, but essentially it's a space beyond literal time and logic. So like what does that mean? If you've ever gone to see a play, you may have noticed that, on one level, the people who are the audience and those on stage were occupying like the same time and space. It's 6 o'clock for me, it's 6 o'clock for the actors, whatever. And the people on stage are also in a different type of reality, right? They might be in a scene that takes place in the past or in the future. They might be in like somewhere that's more fantastical. It can just it's a different kind of space, right? And so that's what I mean by dramatic reality. We can have past and future coexisting at the same time. You can explore past versions of yourself. And it's facilitating this really non-linear deep exploration through certainly image, movement, roles, lots of different things, and concretizing inner experience and the intangible. So, again, what does that mean? We have our thoughts, we have our inner experiences, we kind of keep it all on our insides. But when we concretize, when we externalize, we put it outside of ourselves. We can represent it as shape and form. And then when we do that, we can more easily like interact with it, move it around in a more tactile way. And there's lots of different ways to do that. And the hero's journey framework is going to offer one way to do that. Okay, so what is the hero's journey? It was originally described by Joseph Campbell, who studied myths and stories from many different cultures all over the world and identified that there is a common structure. And this is a very popular story structure. Even today, there are a lot of well-known, movies and stories that follow a hero's journey structure. One example, of course, is Star Wars. But today we're really focusing on using it as a powerful format, as a kind of map to contextualize our own paths and struggles, and really use it as a way to locate ourselves on this larger journey. And when we start to do that, it really provides this powerful sense of meaning. So, very often, the hero's journey is depicted almost as like a circle or a cycle, and different people might have more complex like moments or stages in it. But today, I'm going to kind of to keep it fairly basic because it doesn't need to be more complicated, really, than that. But essentially, there is a protagonist or the hero starts off in their kind of normal world, various things happen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then they kind of transition into what is a liminal place, a place of change and in between, where a lot of change and transformation happens. They eventually return back to their normal world. So now I'll go through these heroes' journeys steps, and I invite you to, I'll pause, I'll try to go a little bit slower. And if you want to, you can just reflect on how it does or does not match up with your experience. If you have a journal, you can maybe like just take notes, but really kind of seeing how this process might reflect or not your own experience. So, If you are familiar with the stages of change model, you might even notice some echoes of it here. So first, like I was saying, there's a hero. It's basically you or a version of you in your ordinary world, life before weight loss, using food in familiar ways, having various known identities, like life as usual, maybe not even really intending to do anything about it, maybe unaware that there is an issue. Essentially, there's not enough tension to initiate change. So maybe, a thought like, okay, well, I know my habits aren't super great, but this is just who I am. Oh, well. Then there is a call to action. So this is where the protagonist is summoned from their ordinary life in some way. And that can look like a challenge. It could also be something more positive, like an invitation. But basically, something is disrupting the status quo, right? So it could be, and again, if you want to, thinking about what that might have been for you, like who or what prompted your weight loss journey, right? Was it some kind of a health result or a health problem? Was it seeing a photo? Maybe it was just a moment of discomfort or like a desire for something different. And oftentimes in this story structure, there's the call to action is accompanied by resistance or reluctance or what's called refusal of the call. So even just thinking, for your own self, was there any like, oh, I don't like this and I don't want to do anything about it. Like I'm not going to pay attention to this. So that's a normal part of the mythic story structure as well is that refusal. Then there's this stage of meeting the mentor. So the mentor is an entity who offers wisdom, support, and or tools for the journey. So thinking about who might be your mentor. So it could certainly be a health professional, but it can also be a wise friend or a family member or even a supportive inner voice. So here's where we're starting to play around with that idea of externalizing. So maybe your mentor is an inner part of you, right? That you're now externalizing into the role of the mentor and kind of you could really play around with it as deep as you want, and fleshing it out as like an actual kind of inner character to some extent, right? So maybe at this stage is kind of this idea of researching programs and various options and gathering tools and really kind of starting to prepare to make changes. And then the next step is crossing the threshold. So this is the moment where weight loss kind of starts to enter this liminal space, this in between, where the protagonist, you are leaving behind old habits and really facing a lot of uncertainty on many different levels. So for your own, if you want to reflect on it, thinking about how you maybe started that process of breaking old patterns and habits and really kind of getting started on that path of change. And sometimes people think about guardians of the threshold. So, if went through a bariatric program or some other type of weight loss program, thinking about guardians of the threshold, like did you have to go through assessment processes? Just for an example, for my weight loss groups, before folks join my group, I schedule like a 15-minute intro call to make sure it's going to be a good fit, right? Kind of acting as that guardian of the threshold kind of idea. So then now you're in this liminal space once you've kind of crossed that threshold. And this is where like you can think of it as like the messy middle. This is where the journey is really deepening. It can become very nonlinear in many ways. I'll talk about that. It's this in-between space. So like old habits are kind of maybe no longer quite so automatic, but new ones aren't really solid yet. And this is really the place where there's a lot of setbacks and people interpret them as failure, but mythically, this is absolutely expected. It's absolutely part of the process, and we're definitely gonna like come back to that idea. And so here's where the first reframe can really pop in is like, okay, this is where my journey is deepening, right? So, um, and these setbacks and obstacles can be quite deep. I mean, there can be elements of grief. There could be, a lot of fear that people experience here on various levels. And so thinking about for your own self, the outer obstacles and inner struggles that you've faced along the way. So, I mean, certainly it could be outer obstacles. It can absolutely be like, certain people can make it very difficult, certain settings, certain environments, as well as inner struggles, right? Like emotional eating, self-doubt, setbacks. And this is again where we're taking that idea of externalizing this inner experience, like my emotional eating, for example, and putting it out there. We can actually externalize it and represent it in some way, symbolically, metaphorically, as an obstacle. And when we do that, when we've created this obstacle outside of ourselves, now we can interact with it in a way that's a little bit more tangible than if we just kind of have it as this amorphous experience. We can depending on how much improvisation and drama therapy, play around with it. Like how heavy is self-doubt? Like what does it actually feel like if I was going to hold my self-doubt, right? And we can give it shape and weight in a lot of different ways. And then along with that, of course, who and what are your sources of support, inner and outer, right? Who are the people in your life that you can rely on for support? What tools can help you in these various encounters and these various challenges? What inner sources of support, your inner roles, your inner parts of self, can you work to strengthen that could step in a moment of challenge, right? And so that idea of grief, really kind of honoring grief maybe over food, over certain amounts of food, over losing a coping tool that once worked. The idea of fear, like it can be really scary. Like who am I becoming as like my habits and my body and even my entire way of being are changing, right? So really kind of honoring these like deeper emotional experiences that can happen along with weight loss, particularly for issues that have been going on for a really long time as well. And so, those who are listening, those who are watching, you might all be at different stages of your own journey, and that's absolutely fine. But thinking about transformation, so maybe like what either, if you're reflecting on your own weight loss journey and you're at a place of maintenance, or you're kind of still in it, maybe like future projecting, like what begins to shift, or what would you like to have shift, right? Not just in your body, but in your confidence in the boundaries that you set and really in your sense of agency in your life, right? Or, how would you envision body, mind, soul transforming if you were able to overcome whatever it is that your personal challenges and obstacles are, in ways that are aligned with your personal values, right? So I think that's also really important is kind of like really kind of overcoming in ways that are really meaningful and important to you personally. And that can look different to different people. And then thinking about either like the wisdom that you gain from the process or what kind of wisdom would you hope to gain? So I'm going to pause like briefly there and just give you like a few moments to kind of reflect on the kind of transformation that you would want that really kind of goes deeper than losing weight. And so then the hero emerges from the liminal space. They go back to their ordinary world, but they have some kind of a reward. And sometimes this can be represented as like a literal magical item or a treasure. But really, I would encourage you to think about something a little bit more metaphorical that can kind of stand in for intangibles. Like maybe the reward is greater self-acceptance or a better relationship with my intuition or a sense of empowerment. Right? It's not just weight change, right? It's, increased mobility, having improved health, greater energy, living more aligned with your values, right? Increased self-trust, emotional tolerance, this greater nuanced understanding of your patterns. And for some people, it can be difficult to think like that. So sometimes it is helpful to move from like metaphor and symbol to that personal meaning. So just a little fun, creative way to practice that if you want to. Just kind of look around your space, notice an object that seems to be calling to you for whatever reason. And okay, let's say that that object is your reward. Thinking about what does it represent to you on a deeper level, right? And that might be something that you kind of sit with, thinking about your associations to the object, maybe how it came into your possession, kind of drawing from all of that is like, what is its deeper meaning to you? And just playing around with the idea of like, if this is your reward. And so that's also infusing that idea of play and creativity into the exploration, right? And so finally, there's the return, right? So it's bringing this changed version of yourself back into everyday life. And that is often where a different kind of work begins, which I'm going to talk about, right? So thinking about or reflecting on, how do you plan to bring your newfound wisdom and energy into the world? Like, how are you going to show up in your life? What is future you like? What do you maybe do differently? All right. So, in summary, when we're thinking about applying the hero's journey to weight loss, it basically becomes a story of you overcoming whatever your personal particular struggle is with long-term weight loss. So, this story becomes about how you obtain and find and really essentially master whatever it is that has been eluding you. And so, again, thinking about that treasure, that elixir kind of as like what you gain in going through that process, right? And so when we're using it as like that map, right, we can externalize and play around with inner roles to embody and strengthen to support our change processes. Also, like mapping out, again, and um, externalizing your whole journey as a hero's journey structure is really a larger process of externalization, like that mapping out. And then you can pop in, like, okay, in this challenge, in this obstacle, what are my sources of support? Is it a person? Is it a resource? Is it a tool? Is it a part of myself that I can practice embodying and strengthening and stepping into in this moment? Almost as though you're kind of like becoming your own, like, inner director in a way, externalizing your obstacles, identifying them, both external and internal obstacles, and really kind of thinking about like what could help you face them. And you may not be at the end of your hero's journey, and that's totally fine. I'm not surprised. But really, the idea is to reframe setbacks and challenges and obstacles as kind of part of this larger process of change that really is transcending weight loss. And to be able to start to be like, oh, I see, I can actually, it would be helpful if I had this source of support in this moment, right? Because you're kind of looking at it from a distance, right? And so identifying what can support you in those moments of challenge, whether it's internal or external. So there's actually this really, I think it's a really interesting paper called Seeing Your Life as a Hero's Journey Increases Meaning in Life. And they talk about the stages in a slightly different way. And I think it can be helpful to kind of maybe think about them like this as well, right? So there's the hero, the protagonist, you. Then there's a shift, right? So they write that in every hero's journey begins with some kind of a spark. So a change in setting or circumstances that makes the hero's life, prior life, untenable, right? I can no longer live this way. And it requires a literal or a psychological journey to resolve. So we're largely talking about kind of going on this more psychological inner journey, right? And then they think about the journey as like this quest, right? In all heroes' journeys, the protagonist endeavors to complete a goal or a quest, whether it's destroying an powerful ring like in Lord of the Rings, or providing for one's family, right? So the objective, the goal, and the desire, right? So even kind of thinking like again, that idea of like what beyond weight loss is motivating you? What is like really prompting you on this journey of change, right? And then allies, right? Protagonists rarely travel the hero's journey alone. They typically depend on others for a broad range of assistance in order to survive and succeed. This is not a solo endeavor. Mythically, structurally, heroes' journeys all require sources of support, right? And yes, it can absolutely be other people. And it can also be a mix of your own inner roles, your own inner being a good ally to yourself. And then the challenges part, right? Heroes' journeys often feature seemingly insurmountable, right? These are not easy little like quick 5 minute, oh, a problem, I will solve it. No, really big obstacles or rivals. And it's these challenges that help to drive the protagonist's actions, providing them with purpose. The challenge is part of the story. It's an integral part. It's so important, right? And these can be inner or outer, right? And the challenges are necessary for the transformation. There is no transformation without the obstacle. In facing the challenge, the protagonist undergoes personal and moral growth and is transformed. They are an important and necessary part of this process, right? And then the legacy. At the end of the hero's journey, the hero's actions leave a positive impact on their communities, right? So this idea of giving back to the world, really, in whatever way that looks like for you. You know, maybe it changes just how you show up in life. Maybe you become involved with helping other people on their weight loss path. Now that you've gone through it. So just kind of finding a way to put that out into the world in a way that's really positive and really supports others who might be at a different point in their journey. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that idea of reframing these setbacks and these challenges, which, as I just so emphatically said, was just such an so important. Um, so the first, kind of way to reframe setbacks, instead of just being like, "Ugh, I failed again," it's like almost like getting excited and like, wow, this is an initiation moment, right? Because in the hero's journey, setbacks are not proof that the protagonist should not be on the path, right? It's the signal that actually transformation is happening, right? Almost like a micro struggle between old ways and new ones that are forming but aren't super like solid yet. And thinking about these moments as like where the old self is kind of starting to like loosen and like crack a little bit. And that shift can show up in a lot of different ways in the context of weight loss, right? So maybe it looks like noticing that old coping strategies like relying on food to meet certain needs, it really it doesn't quite fully meet like that need or really align with what you truly want for yourself, right? It could be something like just feeling more visible or exposed in various ways, right? Like when people lose weight, sometimes the type of attention that they get changes, and that can be really uncomfortable. Maybe it's feeling more vulnerable, like advocating for yourself, or setting boundaries in ways that just feel very like unfamiliar or outgrowing, familiar roles or just ways of being. Maybe before people offered you food and you just ate it. And so this is where like things like people pleasing can really come up. And like now if you like say no, that can bring up a lot of different feelings for folks. And that, again, like I was talking about earlier, is, grief, fear, and discomfort that can naturally arise in response to these changes, right? And so this idea of um, really kind of considering them a part of the process of your process and honoring them. If there's grief at certain stages, kind of allowing yourself to grieve. And it can even be a grief that doesn't look like societal norms around grief. Right? It can be, like I was saying, grief around an identity, grief around food or using food in certain ways, and just really kind of thinking about these experiences as part of a process of adjusting and integrating a new way of being, right? And really kind of respecting for our own self and validating that these shifts can feel very destabilizing. And when they show up as cravings or slips, it doesn't, mean a lack of discipline or that you screwed up or whatever, right? Just kind of thinking that maybe they reflect some other area for growth. Maybe it's about, learning a new skill or continuing a process of forming different habits. Maybe it's a biological or a physiological response. Again, it could be some type of an emotional reaction or really kind of this deeper layer of adjustment and identity or even a sense of self, right? And so that idea of initiation, right? Kind of this idea of being able to let go of something that once worked. And maybe it worked really, really well. Maybe it really worked as a way of avoiding something uncomfortable, um, and kind of tolerating this uncertainty as you're in this transition process, as you're stepping into parts of yourself that maybe you haven't really met yet or fully explored. And so when you encounter a setback or what you perceive as a setback, kind of be like, okay, this tells me where I am in the process. I'm in this messy middle, right? And so that kind of contextualization reframes setbacks as kind of part of this path that you're on. And, I really like what Brenda was saying, almost like as a gift, right? It's this beautiful opportunity to learn more about yourself, right? And so when people can see setbacks in this way, it can really become a meaningful part of the path, a meaningful part of the path, right? An opportunity to integrate and to grow, both in your relationship to food and ultimately in your relationship to yourself, right? Because like in myths, if we kind of step back and think about this from like a mythical perspective, like I was saying, heroes don't transform because everything goes smoothly and it's easy for them, right? They transform because they pass through tests. And that dragon, that labyrinth, that dark forest, the descent into the underworld, those are all symbolic trials along the path. And when we're thinking about weight loss, sometimes that dragon looks like a craving or a setback. But sometimes it's a deeper pattern underneath of it. And sometimes, quite honestly, maybe it's a mix of both, right? It can be different for everyone. So now I want to talk about this idea about journeys within journeys because this is another important piece here that I think a lot of people don't think about for various reasons. But just consider that your overall weight loss journey contains within it multiple journeys. And so that it's not like a linear or a finite path that you're on, right? It can have multiple smaller journeys. And really, it's ultimately kind of part of this larger and evolving story, right? So if you've gone through, bariatric surgery, again, I don't know where everybody is at. Maybe folks have already had surgery, maybe they're exploring it as an option. So, maybe you have like moved through it, or you might feel very much inside of this experience, right? But just kind of this idea that your weight loss, however, there's lots of different ways people choose to lose weight. It doesn't end once you reach your goal weight, right? So the first journey, you can think about it as like initiating change, shifting behavior, seeing results. And the second journey is about sustaining that change. So really starting to ground it into identity, relationships, and daily life. And so even thinking about the second journey, journey two, maintenance as like this new arc that you might be on, right? And even thinking about maintenance almost as like a second call to adventure, because as the body is changing, that deeper work around identity, meaning, relationship to self is continuing, right? And so it's this period of stabilization as identity is shifting. Old coping strategies might generally be gone, but there are new pressures and new challenges that emerge, right? And so it's can think about it maybe as like um, a journey of identity coherence, emotional tolerance, and continued meaning making, continuing to find sources of meaning in the journey, right? So if arc one is like asking, can I change? Arc two is asking, can I live as a person who has changed, right? And so just kind of thinking that, once you reach your weight loss goal, a lot of people kind of think that that's the end of it and they're done. And it's really kind of this idea of it marking like a second unique journey filled with its own set of challenges. And so what I would really hope to leave you with as we're kind of starting to wind up this and then get into the creative activity is just that anytime, you can just kind of consider where you might be on your current journey and on your larger journey, right? And reframing those struggles and setbacks and challenges as really kind of part of this larger cycle of your own personal growth and change, right? And they are not setbacks. They are part of this much larger story that is unfolding and reframing them as part of this larger personal transformation that, like I said, it transcends weight loss, right? And so this idea that recognizing where you are can help you accept that your journey is really cyclical and ongoing. So now we're gonna go into a creative activity. And the goal here isn't to try to spin setbacks as something like positive, right? Just kind of exploring whether they might have a deeper meaning and purpose for you. So I'm going to share my other camera here, and you're welcome to just listen or observe or participate however you want to. But the first step, I'm going to pull 3 cards randomly. These are Dixit cards. Dixit is a children's game. Um, and if you can see these cards, just go ahead and choose the one that most resonates with you in terms of a recent setback. So, thinking about like an urge or a craving, or maybe just a moment that didn't go the way that you hoped. And you don't need to know why you're choosing the card, really, or why the moment didn't go as you hoped. If you're listening in and you're not able to see this, just go ahead and picture in your mind a recent setback. I'll give you like, in the interest of time, like it's just a few seconds for this. And then go ahead and notice what stands out to you in the image that you chose. So is it something about like one of the figures in the image? Is it like the environment or the atmosphere in the image? Is it a sense of movement or stillness or like a feeling, either in the image itself or that you get that it makes you feel in response to seeing it? Just kind of noticing what stands out to you. So you just picked one image, one of these 3. You're not working with all of them, and just noticing what stands out to you. And then considering that if this image, the image that you chose, were a chapter in a book, what is that chapter about? Is it maybe about loss? Is it kind of like a test? Patience? What is like the overarching theme of that chapter? And then thinking about or giving it a title. So, what is the title? Is it like, meeting the dragon along the forest path? Too many items to deal with? Thanks, Rhonda. Yeah, giving it a title. And then for a moment, let's just treat this as a story about a protagonist who resembles you, but isn't exactly like you. So there's this little bit of distance that can sometimes make things a little easier to see when we can kind of step back. So let's consider that this chapter, with its theme and the title that you just kind of developed, Is a chapter with a function for the protagonist that serves their greatest good in some way. So thinking about what might this chapter be strengthening in them? Maybe it's patience, boundary setting, self-trust, reflections. Yeah, what is it strengthening in this protagonist who is not you? Strength. Yep, it could absolutely be strengthening strength. What might this moment or what might this chapter be asking of the protagonist? What is this moment asking of the protagonist? Or another way to think about that is if this chapter were a training ground, what is being practiced? What is the protagonist practicing here? Right? So those are just some different ways to think of. Yep, for courage to push forward. Protagonist is practicing courage to push forward, or it's asking the protagonist to strengthen courage, to strengthen that part of themselves, right? Or to strengthen patience, to strengthen the patient part of themselves, the patient voice, lots of different ways to think about that. And then stepping back and reflecting from this entire creative process, noticing if there is a thread that feels familiar or meaningful to you on some level. It doesn't have to be the entire thing, but just a quality, a feeling, a pattern, a lesson. Again, just noticing something that, hey, this resonates with me personally in terms of my weight loss, right? It can even be just something small. Oh, yes, this idea of patience or courage or strength, something that resonates with you. Just first identifying the smallest moment, the smallest thread of resonance. You don't need to overthink this. Just kind of noticing like what really is like top of mind. And the beauty of a practice like this is it can change. So you might do this next week and what comes top of mind for you, even if you use the same image, it could change and shift. None of this is fixed. So what does that thread suggest that you are learning or practicing? Facing the unknown, happiness. Yeah, what does that suggest that you are learning or practicing right now, today? Not next week, not next month, but right now, as you are engaging in this moment. Yeah, just kind of what it might suggest you're practicing. And it could be wrong. It's like, what might it suggest? Well, maybe, you try it out, you explore that, and like, okay, that was not it, right? Nothing is really fixed. Nothing is like the truth here. Just some exploratory ways to come into ideas here, ideating. And then when I do something like this, I really like to kind of go from this fictional exploratory place and start to distill it into something practical. So, if this chapter, everything that you explored, were a guide for one small experiment that you could try for this week, what would that be? Right? What are you going to take away from this that you can actually put into practice, right? So if it was something around patience, okay, there was this quality of patience that I was like really exploring. So maybe this week I'm going to experiment with being patient in like one concrete way. Maybe I'm going to be really patient with one meal that's been challenging with me for myself, or I'm going to be really patient in decision making because I know that decision making is really stressful. And when I have all these decisions, I end up eating in ways that don't serve me, right? So, kind of just taking one really concrete takeaway that you can actually implement in your daily life. Okay. And so, I know some people put stuff in the chat, but if you try this reflection, if you try something like this later on and you get a chapter title, I'd absolutely be happy to hear it. So feel free to email me feel free to email me your chapter title, maybe a little sentence or two about what it might be reflecting to you, or even one small action that you are going to be experimenting with this week, or even just let me know, how it goes. I'd absolutely be happy to hear about it. So, yeah, so to wrap up, for a limited time, if you send me an email, I will send you a free PDF. I have a book, my Untangled Weight Loss Workbook, which contains so much of everything that I've learned across my exploration in terms of weight management. And I actually have a whole chapter in there on the hero's journey. I'd be happy to send that to you, that chapter. I also have 10 ways to respond to eating urges that don't serve you that I can send you as well. I facilitate a couple of online weight loss groups. One's like a more of a general weight loss group. One is specifically for folks on GLP-1s. And then I also have a group called Crossroads for those who are navigating like personal growth and life changes, and inner shifts. And then, of course, my Untangled Weight Loss Workbook is available on Amazon. And then I have a card deck of 50 practices, my whole health card deck that I developed because I was really starting to see that people don't just struggle with weight loss because they don't like, oh, what should I eat? That's not really helpful for most people. So really kind of trying to give a nonlinear method and different ways of tools and working really for weight loss. But it really serves self-growth in many different ways. That's on Etsy. And for a limited time, it has free shipping. So be sure to check that out. And that's all I got. So thank you for those who listened and tried the activity. I hope that was really helpful for you and gave kind of a creative way of exploring kind of changes to make, right? Like I could ask and be like, oh, what change do you want to make this week? I'm like, okay, I'm going to think about it consciously. But the purpose of this activity was to creatively discover it, this process of discovery, right? Seeing what emerged kind of spontaneously. So yeah, there you go.
Tova, you're amazing. My connection here was on and off, and you just kept it going. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I thought it was intentional, Brenda. You popping in and popping out. I was like, okay, cool. Totally fine.
Yeah, it's like really storming here, but no, thank you so much. And uh for those who are listening on Facebook, I'll be posting the links that she shared here just shortly to make sure that you guys have those here as well. It's just hard to kind of be posting in both places at the same time. But we want to thank you. And Jennifer's saying, can we keep the chat up for an extra second trying to get the links? Yes, we'll definitely keep this chat up for a moment. Um, I also want to just kind of open it to questions and answers to see if anybody does have anything that they'd like to ask
Yeah.
you and post in the thing. Um, so tell us a little bit more. Some of these offerings that you have, we have how to connect to you. We have your website, which is tovalabelmantherapy.com. We have your
Mm-hmm.
email.
Tovadramatherapy@gmail.com.
And repeat that one more time for the
Oh
people
yeah.
just listening.
Tovadramatherapy@gmail.com is my email. Just my first name, dramatherapy@gmail.
Perfect. And if at some point you're listening on our podcast, because this will be played as a replay, all of this will be in the description as well. Your
Yeah.
YouTube channel
Yes,
is
Tova Drama Therapy. And if that kind of way of working and exploring with imagery cards really resonated with you, or maybe you're listening and you missed this, I have lots of videos on my YouTube channel on working with imagery cards. I really like using aspects of like role-playing games and play to really facilitate that kind of exploratory approach. I don't want to say to problem solving, but to kind of thinking about the next step, and exploring it from different perspectives and different angles can sometimes generate like a different idea or a different perspective on it. So using a lot of that creativity for self-exploration, really. So definitely check that out.
this is my first time, yeah, exploring drama therapy. I
Oh
love
yeah.
it. It's
Yeah.
it's so cool. I've never even heard of it before. So how did
Yeah.
you come to drama therapy?
I have a background in improv. So I'd been doing improv for a really long time. And I saw a class that was taught by an RDT. And I was like, oh, what is an RDT? So I looked it up, and it's a registered drama therapist. And there was a drama therapy program near where I lived. And, like I was saying earlier, I was, getting into weight loss coaching because for so long, I was looking at diet and ketosis and metabolism and all this kind of stuff. But through weight loss coaching, I was really starting to see that people aren't struggling because they don't know what to do. A lot of times people do know exactly what to do, but there's a lot of these deeper reasons that make it difficult, like whether it's emotional eating or like I was talking about, these deeper like experiences around identity and finding meaning. And like it really serves the eating serves some kind of a deeper function, and it's not so easy. So I was like, oh my gosh, this like marries my, interest in, weight management and improv. And so really being able to use like aspects of improv, which I do a lot of in terms of my approach to drama therapy. And then, I met Dr. Seti, and, just I feel so grateful to be able to really work in a more serious way with folks around this topic, because so often it's seen as like, oh, just eat this diet, or like, well, don't eat after 7 o'clock. And it's like, for a lot of people, like that's not the answer. There's this like deeper self and that's why my workbook is called Untangle, to like untangle a lot of these pieces that can make things very complex for a lot of people. So, and drama therapy provides so many, I think, really powerful ways to do that, to explore the inner world in lots of different ways, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all of that. And here, just to take a moment as a closing thought. Is there anything you'd like to say? I'm going to be doing a shout out to our sponsor, but before I do that, is there anything else you'd like to say regarding that?
I feel, it's been such a journey, like to be, again, like I said, to be here, to be able to share this, to help other people who are, struggling in various ways. Yeah, and just really kind of, yeah, to just give people different tools or different maybe ways of thinking about things. I'm just so honored and so humbled and so grateful to be here. Thank you again, Brenda, for having me. Thank you to everybody in the kind words in the chat. This was wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah, and we're so happy that so many people joined to be able to connect with this because the guys, the more that you show up for yourselves and be the best version of yourselves, the better that this world
Yes.
is. So thank you for making this world a little better in every way. And I'm going to be I'm going to be sharing my screen here. I'm going to hop on to show our audience a few things here. So one tiny moment here. Okay. There we go. It's procarenow.com is our sponsor's website, which is Procare Health, Procare Health vitamins and supplements. And when you get on to procarenow.com, there's a couple things I just want to just show everyone if you're new to the site. Up at the top is the ProCare Health logo. Right underneath that is a blue bar and it says interested in a free sample. So if you haven't ever tried ProCare, please go in, get you a free sample, try it out. Right now, we do have earned 10% back in loyalty rewards. So there's a little shop now button on our main page. All of our products are kind of listed under shop products, and we have multivitamins, GLP-1 support, calcium, all kinds of therapeutics. Therapeutics are just like those add-on products like biotin, vitamin D, iron, things like that that you can add on to your supplement protocol. And then also we do have proteins as well. So we have all of those things. We have some new bundles. We also, if you're not really sure about what kind of vitamins and supplements might be right for you, there is a build your routine button, and it just goes through a few little questions, maybe 10 little questions. Takes only a minute or two to do, and it just asks you some questions, and then it'll pull you up maybe some supplements that might be work best for you. We also have over here under this resources button, we have the Berry Connected tab, which is basically Berry Connected, you guys, is the name of this podcast. And we have underneath there each month the support groups for that month. Now, hers will be on replay. I'm hoping that my computer glitches on my end didn't stop it from being recorded properly. If it did, I apologize. But we will, if we're able to, you will be able to go back and listen to the replay. And sometimes that's just a really great way because I know you had. I'm going to personally since I was kind of in and out. And I feel like you get so much from the replay because things you didn't always hear in the first time around. So we do have that. We also do have some recent support groups that are posted on here that are replay. And then also down just a little bit below, we do have a YouTube channel as well. So when you're subscribing to Tova's, go ahead and pop in. Also subscribe to Pro Care Health, vitamins and supplements. We have over 500 videos on there, and I'm hoping that this episode will be on there next week as well, if all went well with recording and so forth. So um, that's a little bit on my end. Just want to invite you guys. What ProCare is known for is basically their being one of the lowest cost multivitamins out on the market, especially for those patients who've had weight loss surgery or have undergone that. They're formulated specifically for those people, and we also have this new loyalty reward. So I wanted to say that since that is something new. So if you want to learn more, there's a little button that you can click onto and learn more about that. That is all I have on that. And I know I see a couple more comments coming in. Um, Mary Jane, thank you. She says, I use the ProCare products and love it. I personally don't want to use the fake sugar, so I appreciate the calcium chews. Yeah, our calcium chews are all natural. I think the only one that's out there on the market, they're made with all natural products. They have probiotics in them as well, along with some vitamin D. So great choice. Thank you. Any closing thoughts, Tova?
Nope, nope. I just hope everybody has a beautiful rest of the day wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, thank you. And your sunshine's coming in, that California sunshine.
Yes.
We need some of that.
Yeah.
So thank you. And thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Take care and stay very connected. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.